No. Speaking of which, I have a, does anybody have a poem that they wanted to share tonight that they've brought with them from the book?
I do have two, but I mean, if somebody else wants to go first, I'm
No,
willing to.
it's fine. It's fine.
Okay.
Something about fish?
I don't think so. No.
I have one about being nice to animals,
Okay.
but yeah, we can get to it anytime. So Swayam, yeah.
So should I go ahead first?
Yeah.
Okay. So these two poems I chose from Mirabai because last week was Krishna Janmashtami, birthday of Lord Krishna, and I figured let me read some Mira poems, and two of them kind of stuck a chord in me. The first one is on page 257, and it's titled "Keep Doing That." Love, you have wrecked my body. Keep doing that. I am more well with this deep ache of missing you than content with the physical wonders you can pacify us with. And I chose that because, bhakti is sometimes quite hard because of all the wonders and the toys that nature presents. And we have to keep kind of going away from that and wanting the love to get so deep that we yearn and ache. So that's the reason I chose the poem. And Mirabai was particularly, I guess, embodiment of that. She was such a deep bhakta.
Would you read it again? Because for those people that don't have the book or can't look at the book, it's really helpful to hear the poem twice.
Sure. Okay, so the poem is titled "Keep Doing That." Love, you have wrecked my body. Love, you have wrecked my body. Keep doing that. I am more well with this deep ache of missing you. I'm more well with this deep ache of missing you than content with the physical wonders you can pacify us with. Was that clearer?
Yeah, well, it wasn't the fact that it was unclear the first time, dear. I think that what Jyoti was pointing out is
Right.
it's just helpful to hear it again for people who don't have it in front of them, or like Heidi, or can't read it even if they, I could go find it, but I just prefer to hear you read it, and so it's wonderful. That's a refrain among these saints. It's true. Don't distract me with your physical wonders that you can pacify us with. An interesting term.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's hard because we do get easily pacified. There are so many toys and so many wonders. It's one day this and one day that, and it just keeps drawing in. So the next poem was, it's from page 260, and it's titled Preference. The title is Preference. Stuck with another day, how should we pass it? Stuck with another day, how should we pass it? If anything worked for you before, I'd give that preference. If anything worked for you before, I'd give that preference. So
it's interesting that it's interesting she chooses the word stuck with another day.
Right.
That's how we feel when we don't feel the presence of the divine.
Exactly, right. Exactly. And so if anything worked for you before, I'd give that preference. And that's also something to think about, because I think we keep moving like from one thing to another, thinking, okay, maybe this will be better than that. But sometimes then we end up coming back to what really worked before. So I kind of felt these two poems almost interconnected to some extent.
That's good therapy. She could have been a therapist.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
That's
Some of her
smart.
some of her other poems were quite colorful, but
Oh yes, she was very powerful.
yeah. But that's it. I have those two poems that I wanted to read. Thank you.
So I think June has a poem, and I think, Jyoti, were you going to read it for her, or?
Someone, please do read it. It's on page 277,
And that's in the Hafiz book or the Love Poems book?
the love poems book.
Oh, you switched from last night when we discussed it.
Are you going to read it, Jyoti?
Yes, please.
Thank you. You're a good reader.
Thank you.
You really are.
I like to do it. I like to read.
Okay, thank you.
Oh. Not yet tickled.
Oh yes.
How did those priests ever get so serious and preach all that gloom? I don't think God tickled them yet. Beloved, hurry. I'll read it once more. How did those priests ever get so serious and preach all that gloom? I don't think God tickled them yet. Beloved, hurry.
Yeah. That's from Saint Teresa of Avila, who June was telling me before everybody else got on. She was telling me that she had really dived deep into Saint Teresa. But you know, Meister Eckhart said something that is and a companion to that poem, so to speak. The title is very short. It's called "It's a Lie," and it goes like this: "It's a lie. Any words about God that do not comfort you. It's a lie. Any words about God that do not comfort you." I love that poem. Yeah.
Who is that, Brother Shankar, that you just, the one?
It's from Meister Eckhart.
Because there's one that feels similar to that, but I'm not, gosh, I'm not sure who it is. I'll read it first and then I'll find out who it is, unless you know. This is called An Image That Makes Them Sad. How long will grown men and women in this world keep drawing in their coloring books an image of God that makes them sad?
I think that is also Meister Eckhart.
Let's see if oh, what happened there? How did that happen? Oh, I see. Sometimes these, you think they're one person and they're really another. This is, golly, it must have been, oh, you're right, it is.
I love that. I love that image of the coloring book.
I did too.
Would you read it again, please? It's such a sweet poem.
Let me find it again.
I don't mean to be a smart aleck, but I've had this book for a long time now, and I've gone through it several times. So I do recognize who some of the poems are.
Okay. How long will grown men and women in this world keep drawing in their coloring books an image of God that makes them sad? Stop that.
Wow.
There's a joke. It's a true story, but it's told as a joke about the French philosopher and writer Voltaire. And as those of us who know about Calvinism, we know it preaches that gloom and doom. It is really very gloom and doom oriented. And so one time, Voltaire was being interviewed by a French journalist, and Voltaire said that he had lost his faith. And so that was published in the newspaper. And so one day Voltaire was walking on the street, and he was approached by two men, and they said, "Oh, Monsieur Voltaire, we understand that you have lost your faith. So now you can join us on the true path and become a Calvinist." And Voltaire replied, "Gentlemen, I confessed that I had lost my faith, not that I had lost my mind." Yeah, that's the way I feel about it too. That gloom and doom, man, that doesn't sell with me at all. Never has. Hello, Liam. Good evening.
Hello. Oh, I didn't realize my mic was off. Oh, good evening.
So good evening. Welcome among us.
Thank you.
So that poem about haven't tickled them yet, that's by Saint Teresa. That is just priceless.
There's another one, and I think it's on 278 or 279.
You remember the title, June?
No.
278, the title is Your Playmates, and 279 is Clarity is Freedom.
Oh, shoot. I don't know which one.
Does it start out with having tea yesterday with a great
Yes.
theologian?
Yes. Yes.
All right. May I read it?
Yes, please.
Clarity is freedom. I had tea yesterday with a great theologian who asked me, "What is your experience of God's will?" I liked that question, for the distillation of thought hones thought in others. Clarity, I know, is freedom. What is my experience of God's will? Everyone is a traveler. Most all need lodging, food, and clothes. I let enter my mouth what will enrich me. I wear what will make my eye content. I sleep where I will wake with the strength to deeply love. All my mind can hold. What is God's will for a wing? Every bird knows that. So I'm going to read it one more time.
Please do.
Clarity is freedom. I had tea yesterday with a great theologian, and he asked me, "What is your experience of God's will?" I liked that question, for the distillation of thought hones thought in others. Clarity, I know, is freedom. What is my experience of God's will? Everyone is a traveler. Most all need lodging, food, and clothes. I let enter my mouth what will enrich me. I wear what will make my eye content. I sleep where I will wake up with the strength to deeply love all my mind can hold. What is God's will for a wing? Every bird knows that.
I love those last two lines. I mean, that is the distillation of thought that she's talking about. It's just, would you read those last two lines again, Jyoti?
What is God's will for a wing? Every bird knows that.
Brother Shankara, I'd love to hear your expounding those two lines a bit, if you can.
One of the great debates in religious philosophy is free will. Is there free will or not? And you'll find that the saints that are in this book uniformly say that in one way or another, free will is an illusion. But because we are the divine presence that is doing the willing, and that includes the bird, if we attune ourselves to our divine being, then like the bird's wing, we know what to do. Every bird knows that. Read the lines again, Jyoti, please, so that it'll connect with what I just said.
What is God's will for a wing? Every bird knows that.
Exactly. So if we are attuned with the divine presence within us, Father Thomas Keating, that great Catholic, I'm going to say saint, at the end of his life, he said these words: when you truly trust God, you don't have a care in the world. And so ever since I've heard those words, the effort here is to try to make them a reality for me. When you truly trust God, You don't have a care in the world. And that's how I hear what Saint Teresa wrote. What is God's will for a wing? Every bird knows that. And of course, again and again, we find the metaphor of wing and flight in these saintly poets. So
Thank you, Brother Shankar.
those are my thoughts. I think in time, by the way, that Keating will indeed be canonized. He will be recognized by the church as someone who became transcendent. Since everybody's quiet, I'm going to read something. This is from St. Thomas Aquinas, and it also has the bird image in it. It's called On Behalf of Love. Every truth, without exception. I'm going to repeat that just so that it's his first declaration of the poem. Every truth, without exception, no matter who makes it, is from God. If a bird got accused of singing too early in the morning, if a lute began to magically play on its own in the square, and the enchanting sounds it made drove a pair of young lovers into a wild public display of passion, if this lute and bird then got called before the Inquisition and their lives were literally at stake, could not God walk up and say before the court, all acts of beauty are mine, all happen on the behalf of love? And while God was there, testifying for our heart's desires, hopefully the judge would be astute enough to brave a question that could go, Dear God, you say all acts of beauty are yours. Surely we can believe that. But what of all actions we see in this world? But what of all actions we see in this world? For is there any force in existence greater than the power of your omnipresent hand? And God might have responded, I like that question, adding, may I ask you one as well? And then God would say, have you ever been in a conversation when children entered the room and you then ceased speaking because your wisdom knew they were not old enough to benefit, to understand? As exquisite as your world, most everyone in it, as exquisite is your world, most everyone in it is spiritually young. Spirituality is love, and love never wars with the minute, the day, oneself, and others. Love would rather die than maim a limb, a wing. Dear, anything that divides man from man, earth from sky, light and dark, one religion from another, oh, I best keep silent. I see a child just entered the room.
Who was that? I'm sorry.
St. Thomas Aquinas.
Oh, okay.
It's the very first poem. And, you know, Ladinksy was very, very aware of his through line for each of these poets. He arranged their poems so that they created something. The whole was more than the sum of its parts.
Right.
There's a name for that, and I can't remember what it is.
There's one, and I thought it might be the same person, but this is actually St. Francis. It's a short one, but it to me, it relates to at least the end of the one you just read.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes, always from the child's hand, the sword should be removed. I think every nation is an infant.
Yes.
Every nation is a what?
Infant.
Always from the child's hand, the sword should be removed.
I think every nation is an infant.
Our meditation on, you know, our daily meditation on what is happening to us and what has happened to us. And I hope none of us spend that much time thinking about what's going to happen to us because we just can't know. But this business of thinking about what's happening to us and what has happened to us, and this business of God's will and our will, it's as Jesus says in the Gospel of Thomas, you know, when you find me, you will be troubled. I certainly am living that logion of Christ's.
Is that why that poem we read last week was when God asks God, where are you? Look out.
Yeah,
God.
exactly. It hits the fan.
That was Tukaram, wasn't it?
Yeah, it sure was.
Well, I might read this one that I had wanted to read tonight. I just love it so much. This is this Meister Eckhart? Gosh, you know, that's one of the things that kind of bothers me about this book is that you don't know which.
What's the title?
It is Eckhart. Okay. Oh, my cat is meow, meow, meowing outside the window. But she's just going to have to wait while I read this poem about being nice to animals. Ooh, Oops. Well, I lost it. Hold on.
This is one of my favorite poems in the whole book.
This one?
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
It's
Good.
about the burro, right?
Yeah, but there are two about the Budurul. I
Oh.
think this is my favorite Budurul one, and the other one is your favorite, but we'll see. Okay.
Okay.
This is called Love Does That. All day long, a little burro labors, sometimes with heavy loads on her back, and sometimes just with worries about things that bother only burros. And worries, as we know, can be more exhausting than physical labor. Once in a while, a kind monk comes to her stable and brings a pear. But more than that, he looks into the burro's eyes and touches her ears. And for a few seconds, the burro is free and even seems to laugh, because love does that. Love frees.
Please read it again.
I will. All day long, a little burro labors, sometimes with heavy loads on her back, and sometimes just with worries about things that bother only burros. And worries as we know, can be more exhausting than physical labor. Once in a while, a kind monk comes to her stable and brings a pear. But more than that, he looks into the burro's eyes and touches her ears. And for a few seconds, the burro is free and even seems to laugh, because love does that.
Mm.
Love frees.
Yes. Eckhart also has a poem about a spider who lives in the corner of the, it just makes me think when I read it of the time that he spent in Paris. He was a master at he was invited to be one of the great ones at the University of Paris. And it could have been anywhere, but somehow it made me think of that. It's about a spider that lives in the corner of his window pane. And comforts herself by the warmth of the candle.
Do you want me to read it?
Oh, yes, please.
I found it. It's called A Flame Burned Well. A flame burned well and kept its country warm. There weren't many inhabitants in that world. A spider lived in a cozy web in the corner of the window. She felt the warmth from the candle on the sill and slept better at night. And they visited sometimes, 3 moths, and pressed against the pane I look out from on to God. I'll read it again.
Please.
A flame burned well and kept its country warm. There weren't many inhabitants in that world. A spider lived in a cozy web in the corner of the window. She felt the warmth from the candle on the sill and slept better at night. And they visited sometimes, 3 moths, and pressed against the pane I look out onto. I look out from onto God. And they visited sometimes, 3 moths, and pressed against the pane I look out from onto God.
As you read through this whole book, one of the things that you find is this communication, profound communication between the saints and the natural world. So when Eckhart says the spider took comfort in the candle flame and slept better at night, I don't think that's metaphorical. I think he really experienced that. He has another poem about talking to an ant. He says to the ant, "Have you ever been to Paris?" And the ant said, "No, but I would like to go." And then the ant said to him, "Have you been to," and mentioned a famous ant city? And Eckhart says, "Oh, no, but I would like to go too." Again, I don't think these are metaphors. They have metaphorical meaning, yes, but I think they really have this capacity. There is a book called Kinship with All Life. Anybody who wants to read it would be benefited. It's a wonderful book. Just a very small book. Kinship with All Life, about a man who learns to communicate with the natural world. Swami Prabhavananda knew him. He lived near the center in Hollywood.
I'm not sure I remember knowing that.
Maybe I've never told you that.
Maybe. That's interesting.
I have a poem.
Okay, Jyoti G.
The title, it's on page 107, and the title is I Bet God. If he let go of my hand, I would weep so loudly. I would petition with all my might. I would cause so much trouble that I bet God would come to his senses and never do that again.
Please read it again, Jyoti.
I Bet God is the title. If he let go of my hand, I would weep so loudly. I would petition with all my might. I would cause so much trouble that I bet God would come to his senses and never do that again.
I love that.
Yeah, isn't that beautiful, June?
Yes, it is.
Jyoti, can you find out quickly who wrote that?
Sure. Well, I just have to turn the pages. It'll take me a little second. I got it. It is Meister Eckhart.
Yeah. If you read the little biography at the front of this, Meister Eckhart lived an absolutely amazing life and lived to be quite old. Unusually, most of these saints didn't live that long. But he lived, I don't know, he was 88 or something like that. But, because he had become such a force in particularly Germany, the Inquisition was about to go after him. And so he just up and died. You can't chase me there. Heidi, I really look forward to you getting this book because I think you'll just enjoy the living daylights out of it.
I know I will. I'm writing all the poems we've written down, the names of pages, so I can, go back and read them.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks for reading that, Jyoti. That is again, you
I found a poem that's, I think, quite uplifting. Can I read it?
of course.
Okay. So this one is Saint Teresa of Avila. It's page 283. The title is As I Found the Source. When your soul was born, it was like a still ocean that had yet to experience its infinite life. God then came to the shores of our souls and gazed upon the immaculate splendor that his divine heart created. He then took off his clothes and dove into us. Nothing on their own have your arms ever done. The movements of your feet are caused by the waves he stirred. Light baptizes life wherever it falls, and every religion and all upon this earth is a shadow. A shadow may move, but it has no real power of its own, though it can affect the weak and frighten them, and men can use that darkness to exploit others. As I found the source of all we do, as I found the source of all our desires, so humble God became. He admitted, yes, I caused all things.
Could you read it again, please, from the beginning, please?
Sure. The title again is As I Found the Source. When your soul was born, it was like a still ocean that had yet to experience its infinite life. God then came to the shores of our souls and gazed upon the immaculate splendor that his divine heart created. He then took off his clothes and dove into us. Nothing on their own have your arms ever done. The movements of your feet are caused by the waves he stirred. Light baptizes life wherever it falls, and every religion and all upon this earth is a shadow. A shadow may move, but it has no real power of its own, though it can affect the weak and frighten them, and men can use that darkness to exploit others. As I found the source of all we do, as I found the source of all our desires, so humble God became. He admitted, yes, I caused all those things. And this is quite similar to the message that we read in the Gita, that Krishna says he does everything.
Oh, yes. Well, that's that thing that I read from St. Thomas Aquinas in the beginning. All truths, no matter who made them, they're real, they're true. Once again, there's this meditation on free will. And, that's the heart of that poem. God made us, then dove into us. And then it began to move.
I have one that I wanted to read that was reminded me of what Swayam just read, and I believe it was written by Tukaram,
Uh-huh.
and it's simply titled "The Source."
Mm-hmm.
It says, "The source. God has never really spoken, though a thought once crossed his mind. It is the echo of divine silence. We hear the birds sing, and that is the source of all we see and touch."
Would you read it again, please, Liam?
Absolutely. The source. God has never really spoken, though a thought once crossed his mind. It is the echo of divine silence. We hear the birds sing, and that is the source of all we see and touch.
What do you find in that, Liam, that makes that poem so appealing to you?
So for me, it's the idea of the echo of the divine silence,
Mm.
and the idea of, God has never really spoken, though a thought once crossed his mind. Like, I find that as silence is the word of God, or the thoughts of God.
Well, it's interesting how that parallels the Upanishads. And I don't know whether Tukaram was deliberately referring to this or not. But the according to a couple of the Upanishads, the only thought that ever crossed God's mind is, "I am one, I shall become many." And so, Tukaram then says, "We hear the birds sing," and that's the source of everything. From silence comes the not silence. And it's the source of everything. Beautiful. Thanks for selecting that.
Thank you. And one thing I'd just like to add based on what you just shared as I sat is that, for me, the, the practice of listening, right, allowing my thoughts to go silent is what allows me to hear the bird sing, right? If I'm sitting and thinking about, oh, my to-do list and blah, 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 blah. Like, it's a very commonly pattern in our society, like do, and just not sit and just be silent and listen, you know, that I won't be able to hear the bird singing.
Yeah. There's another poem by Meister Eckhart in which he says that he's deep in thought about a very unwanted experience. And into that comes the song of a bird and changes everything.
I also have heard this that prayer is when you speak to God, and silence is when God speaks to you.
This is what's said.
I have one I want to read, but I'm seriously trying to remember if I've already read it. Not tonight, but it's the one feeling very secure about the planets. It's a Tukaram.
Oh, please read. Yes.
If I have read it before for you guys, I just love it so much, and I've read it to people outside of this group. So I love this. Okay, it's called Feeling Very Secure. Some planets rolled in those openings on the side of my head. I haven't heard anything for years. Whenever I see a mouth moving in front of me, I just assume someone is saying something brilliant and then go on about my day, feeling very secure. Okay, I'll read it again.
Please.
Some planets rolled in those openings on the side of my head. I haven't heard anything for years. Whenever I see a mouth moving in front of me, I just assume someone is saying something brilliant and then go on about my day, feeling very secure. Tukaram was a character, is
Oh,
a character.
indeed. Absolutely.
Hmm.
When he says, I haven't heard anything for years, once again, I think we have to take these great ones at their word. And when he says, and when I see a mouth moving in front of me, I just assume somebody's saying something brilliant. Oh, how perfect. How perfect. Mhm. One of the things that is so marvelous about this book is that it opens us up to truth said in so many ways, always very individualistic and even quirky, like Tukaram and in Saint Teresa of Avila sometimes. Mm. Just our willingness to just sit on what we already know gets pretty disrupted by this book. I'm so glad we're sharing it. Well, it's just coming up on 9 o'clock. And I'm going to confess that I would like to watch the opening of the Democratic National Convention.
Yep,
I second that.
I heard it.
So I'm going to sign off at 9 o'clock, and so we'll just
Thank you.
say, oh. Amen. So good night, everyone.
Good night. And
Good
thank
night.
everybody.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Brother Shankar.
Until next week.
Good
Good
night.
night, dearly loved ones.
Good
Stay
night.
well.
you.
Bye.
Night.
Good night.
And
Good night.
good night, dearly loved ones indeed. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night, Cindy.
Good night, June.